with all of this introduction, our first special guest who luckily made it today after a 6-hour drive and a lot of coffee to still join us for the last seminar of this winter season. And as the Austrian Association of Snow and Avalanches, we always like to have a look beyond and how other people do it. And Sweden is particularly interesting because they are completely different. They have a very different system. And Mattias, I think, is a very good example for how we work, because he is a practitioner. He comes from mountain guiding. He has a background as Avalanche Technician. And at the same time, he works in the, and I don't know exactly which ministry it is, but he's going to give us a little bit more of a glimpse how it actually works in Sweden as coordinator for the education program and the warning services up there. I hope I summarized it correctly, but actually it is Mattias' job to give us a little bit of an idea how it works in Sweden. So the word goes up to Sweden. Thanks, Mattias.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, good. So yeah, thank you very much for inviting me. We feel honored, me and my colleagues, that you asked. So it was absolutely something that we wanted to do. I did have a slightly rough night and day. So if I'm not making sense, that might be because I'm a little bit tired, but I had 2 extra cups of coffee now. So if there's something you don't really understand, just raise your hand or ask questions. I really don't mind. But I really wish that I could have been in Innsbruck instead. I really enjoyed it last time I was there during the ISSW, and I think it would be better to share a beer with you there than having one here alone in Sweden. So that's too bad. And also, I think for me, Austria is quite a special place. I think it has made a lot of impact on my life and how my life has turned out so far, because I did spend my first winter season in Saalbach-Hinterglemm when I was 19 after school and after military service, 19 or 20. And I really enjoyed the lifestyle. I enjoyed the skiing, and it gave me a whole new perspective on life. And I think without that season, I probably would not have ended up where I am today working with avalanches. So that's really special to me. And I also feel humble talking to all of you, the Austrian professional avalanche community, because in many ways in my job, I've been looking towards Austria also to get inspired by the warning service in Tyrol, or I've read the book from Rudi Meyer and Patrick Nyers and so on. So it feels like we've always thought that we are the ones to learn from you. And I think that's still the case, but still I feel honored to present our work that we've been doing the last couple of years to you guys. So yeah, I'm very happy there. So I figure if I try to share my screen, you can give me a thumbs up if you see my presentation.
Looks beautiful so far.
Okay, great. So that'd be good. Do like this. So very, very short about me is that I'm employed by the Swedish Environmental Protection Agency. So, and it's, yeah, for historical reasons, we've been working with mountain safety. And when we started a warning service in Sweden, the government decided that this was the agency that should run it. So my job is basically to plan and to work with the whole program before the season and after the season. And I also forecast during the winter. And then my other part of the job is to coordinate the Swedish Avalanche education program. And I will tell you a little bit about both of those. And very short about me is that academically, I have a Master of Science in Business and Economics. Never really pursued that career too much. Maybe I should blame the year in Saalbach, because I spent more and more time in the mountains and been working with different kinds of avalanche safety work for around 15 years of practice. And then things kind of merged when I got employed into the government agency to work with this program. And my avalanche training is I've taken most of the courses in Canada. So I took the CA level 3 some 5 years ago or something. So enough about me, and on to where I work and operate. And I think that it's, I mean, all Swedish skiers are very familiar with Austria and with the Alps and the mountains and what it looks like. And I'm not so sure that it's just as exciting for Austrians to go to the Swedish mountains, at least not for skiing, but the context is quite different, I would say, both geographically and demographically and so on. And I think that will reflect why we do a lot of things differently, perhaps, from what you do in the Alps, but also I will try to see, I think we do a lot of things similar. But the mountain range itself, and I will see if you can, starts down here, somewhere around 61 degrees north latitude, and moves up all the way up to 69 degrees north. So that means it's some 1,000 kilometers long, and that's quite a distance to say. It's a remote area for in many places. There are a few towns, no cities, few towns. There are a few roads, mainly resorts that people go to during holidays. The local populations are very small. There's also very little infrastructure. So we sometimes call it the largest wilderness in Europe or something, and I would not say it like that, but it's definitely, that's a big difference from moving around in the Alps, where you have towns and villages and roads in many places. And that is, of course, a challenge, and I will come back to that. But we have also, I will tell you a little bit more about the terrain, but our peaks are generally, the highest peaks in Sweden reach just above 2,000 meters. More like most peaks are more into the 1,000 to 1,500 meters above sea level. And our tree line starts somewhere from 700-800 meters above sea level in the southern part of the range, up to almost 500 meters above sea level in the northern part. So we have a lot of alpine terrain, even though the peaks are not that high. Weather-wise and climate-wise, we're also, I mean, we're quite far north of you guys. I would say we have generally a much colder climate than the Alps. We have basically very little sun during December, January, February, and then we get a lot of sun, but it's very different from an avalanche perspective as well. Like, we don't really have any warming during early seasons unless it's raining. It's cold, dark. We can have periods that are down to -30. But on the other hand, as you see on this side here, we have a lot of ocean, so it could also be wet and moist. And even though Norway catches most of the moisture, we could still have mid-season rains. At least now in the last couple of years, it seems like it has become more and more frequent with early season rains, most likely some climate change effect with increased temperatures. But we also have a large land mass to the east of us. This is where you find Sweden. Here is Sweden. So here is a large continent. Here we have a large ocean, and that really can create all kinds of weather for us during the winter season. And that also can create some very different snowpacks. In general, I would say the Swedish mountains, the one thing that is constant is wind. We always have wind. We have large open areas, peaks are not that high. We have large plateaus, huge fetch zones for catching snow and wind transport. And there are a lot of windy days and a lot of stormy days every winter season. And even though we don't get that much precipitation, you could say we're extreme cases in the eastern part of the range maybe gets around 100 to 200 millimeters of precip during the winter season, and extreme parts in the western part of the range near the Norwegian border might get up to 1,000 millimeters of precipitation during the same period. So we get with those different precip amounts and different wind or constant winds, we get a very unevenly distributed snowpack. So wind creates most avalanches. We have a lot of places, and some years when it's colder, we get a lot of deeper instabilities like depth ore. In the early season, we get a lot of surface ore. And also now with rains and mild weathers and damp periods with colder temperatures, we see a lot of crust facet combinations as well. So we tend to have a lot of different kinds of weak layers. Persistent or old snow avalanche problems are common, but most days of the year we forecast wind slabs. That's a certain thing. And I think that is different to where when you're in the Alps, and the wind slab problem tend to be localized quite high up below ridge line and not distributed all over the terrain. But we basically, with huge fetch zones, we sometimes see like some 10 centimeters of snow creates avalanches that are 1 meter deep. So you don't need a lot of snow to create big avalanches in this kind of terrain. And yeah, as I said, the terrain is also, since it's an old mountain range, it's eroded, it's rounded, we tend to have flat peaks, rounded peaks, and steep sides. A lot of places, those sides are convex, and in most places, they tend to drop down into tree line, into birch forest. So that's where we see the most dangerous terrain in Sweden is probably those steep convex slopes that are not that big, but they end up in really bad terrain traps at tree line. So that's where we tend to have most severe accidents. We barely have any coniferous forests that are connected to avalanche terrain. It's more in the inland where we don't have the mountains. There are a few places, but generally it's either alpine terrain or tree line terrain that only consists of birch trees. And this, I think, is very different from Austria, that the only element at risk that we have is people visiting the mountains. So we have a few places, there are some sections of road and railroad, there are a few private cabins and some power lines that could be affected by avalanches, but in generally what we work with is only people. So it's a people problem, and that means it's not really an engineering problem because there's very few fixed measurements or protections don't really exist. So what we try to do is we need to communicate and inform the people that go up into the mountains so they make good choices and stay out of avalanches. So it's skiers, snowboarders, snowmobilers as a large user group that are generally more difficult to reach than the skiers for some reason. And also, besides recreation, one of our user groups and an element at risk is, of course, all the professionals that work in the mountains, either as mountain rescue or ski patrollers or guides or something. So it's either on the sort of professional or recreational side of things, but always element at risk, or there's just the humans that are visiting. There's basically no one living in avalanche terrain. And that makes it quite a bit different. It's not an industry as in some countries, as in Austria. It also means that there's less money involved, and that means that there's not really any academic way to work with avalanches in Sweden, because there's just not, if you're a geologist or you're an engineer and you want to work with natural hazards, you probably end up working with, most likely, flooding is what we have most problems with, or maybe landslides or something that are slightly where we absolutely have more infrastructure that are at risk, so more money at stake, whereas avalanches are just a people problem. And that's really the objective of the program that we run, the warning service, is that we need to communicate to the public, and we need to communicate also to the professional part of the avalanche community or the mountain community. And not just because we don't see that we perhaps need to inform them about avalanche safety, but we see them as ambassadors for our service. So we want to have good relations with the professional users so they can inform their clients and guests about our product, really. And our mission is to give relevant, accurate, and useful information about avalanche hazard to both recreational and professional mountain travelers in Sweden. So it's basically the same thing I just said. The number one priority, our main objective is really, we need to reduce the number of avalanche accidents and incidents. That's, if people are killed or people are severely injured, that's a cost for society, and that's why we invest in this program to reduce the number. And I will get back to that, but the numbers are not large, super large in any ways. I think fatality wise, there's some 50 Swedes that have died in avalanches during the last 20 years. So 2.5 per year on average, but out of those, most Swedes die in other countries than Sweden. So we have slightly less than one fatality per year on average in Sweden. So that might be, it's not I mean, there are other problems in society that are much worse, but this is the one that I work with. So we also want to contribute to safer mountain visitor experience and also increase the public awareness and also knowledge about avalanches. And currently we are operating 6 regions. Here you can see that there's just small parts of the mountain range, but we've chosen the most popular and most visited regions where we have the winter tourism, also where we have a track record of historical avalanche fatalities, avalanche accidents. But we are in the process of trying to create some more regions, and it's a challenge because it's really data sparse in the whole mountain range. There are very few automated weather stations. The ones we have are most often located near roads at valley bottoms, so they're not really representative for anything. So we are currently trying to purchase and put up some more weather stations, and can be a little bit of a bureaucratic process to place them in a good position. So we're working on it to get some more data. Since we don't have a lot of automated weather stations, it's also quite low tech because we are sort of taking some baby steps towards snowpack modeling and modeling of wind transported snow, but it's a challenge that we don't really have the data to put into the models. Instead, we are working quite old-fashioned. We invest probably more time in field work than many other countries do in order to compensate for this. We also focused a lot on having a local organization in all the regions, so not just observers, but we have something we call a daily nowcaster. So the field team not only makes observations, they also make a hazard assessment as a nowcast, and then the forecasting part is done centralized in an office where the local nowcaster and forecaster have a dialogue for every region, every bulletin, every day. And we get a lot of help from the Swedish Met Office with the weather forecasts on the avalanche forecasting side of things. So I will not tell you too much more about this. I will get back to the methods later, but I think we work quite similar to most other countries, but we have our challenges that are not unique, but it's data sparse, large regions. You need to extrapolate a lot of you will never have enough data, and we most likely only see a small part of all the avalanches in the whole mountain range. But given that we invest a lot of field time, we think that we see the most things that happen in the regions. And we also have, since they're locally, how do you say, they're locally based, the field teams, the nowcasters, they have good relations to the community, so they also get a lot of information from people who has triggered avalanches and where and so on. So it's a little bit of detective work. And then we move on to the other part, like the other leg of what I work with, and that's the education program. Sveriges Lavindutbildningar, or in short SVELAV, and that means just Swedish Avalanche Education. And I guess some of you might ask, and that's a good question, like why are the warning service doing avalanche education? And the main reason, which we also reported to the government and got approved, that is that since most Swedish citizens that die in avalanches get killed abroad, just informing about the conditions in Sweden day by day will not reduce that number, or will not. So with those 50 fatalities in 20 years, 40 of them were in other countries than Sweden. So this is something I personally like a lot, because it makes my job even more fun, because education is interesting, and it also challenges me sometimes as a forecaster, that we also have courses and we teach instructors and so on that then teach the public. So it makes my job more diverse, and I think it is a good combination, but I will get back to that. So the bottom line is to reduce the number of accidents. And also, of course, we see that the education side of things is a way it makes cooperation with other actors or other stakeholders or other groups easier than if we were just a warning service. But since we, with the Avalanche education program, it is easier to cooperate with others. And it's also, of course, in our own interest to secure the competency. We need to replace field workers, we need to replace forecasters. Then if we also have some influence or a lot of influence and control over the education program, that helps us a lot. And you could say that SVELAV is really a partnership. So it's not just, this is the, this is the logo for my employer. So that's the Environmental Protection Agency. But there's three main parts of the program. This is the Ski Area Association that historically, before we started working, had an avalanche education program. So we work close with the ski areas, and also because there are most avalanche accidents that occur in Sweden are off-piste, out of or near resort ski touring. So that's a key partner for us. And then here at the top is just the instructor team, and we work with a franchise model, you could say. So the avalanche instructors are selling avalanche courses commercially to the public, but the courses they sell, they don't create them themselves. They get the material from us, and we teach them, and we make quality control, and we have some continuous professional development with the instructors, but they then sell and market the products within their own companies. So they are, of course, the most important part of the program, because they are the ones that teach the public. But the good thing is that they teach the public the things we want them to teach. And I think that is beneficial. But then we have two other partners that are very important, and it is the Swedish Armed Forces that have quite an ambitious avalanche safety program, and the Swedish Mountain Guides Association, so a member of the IFMGA, that we also work closely with. And there are also quite a bulk of the Swedish mountain guides that also are avalanche instructors teaching the courses. As I said, it is a franchise concept. So that means there are a lot of companies that market and sell what we also find that is our product. So it's really, I think that's a great way of reaching out further into the user groups, because these companies are much cooler than a government agency would ever be. So we work in the background, we provide instructors with all the material, we provide them with training, we sign contracts, and they assure that they will follow the manuals and the use the course material in the right way and so on. And it saves them a lot of time. Instead of every instructor has to create their own Avalanche course, we do a lot of the work for them and provide the material. So that's, I think it seems to work out, and it's sort of a partnership, with a win-win partnership there. Courses are both for snowmobilers. As a growing segment for sure. I think there's huge potential for us to reach the snowmobilers. We look a lot to the US and Canada in this case, because they are way ahead of us, but it's inspiring. But most course, I would say 90% of the participants are skiers or snowboarders on the Avalanche courses. We find that the one thing that all these groups have in common is the field team for the forecasting or warning service. This is the mountain guide group. This is accident with mountain rescue and the ski patrol. And this is an Avalanche instructor teaching a course. And this is the armed forces. That the one thing they all have in common is they all need to manage avalanche risk. In some way, we need to manage the risk to make good decisions and stay out of bad situations. So this is the one thing in common, and this is just our definition, which we have borrowed from Canada, from CAA and Grant Statham. So from the conceptual model, the likelihood and size of avalanches provides the avalanche hazard, and then you add the exposure and the vulnerability of the element at risk to get the avalanche risk. We created this sort of model, also inspired by Grant, who did a review of our program some years ago, and this is one of the things he sort of suggested, and we've continued to build on. So we have this risk-based program where we put everything centers around managing risk, and then we have 3 legs, and we want to sort of equally, how to say, put equal pressure on all these legs in order to create a successful program. And if we start with the education, just to share the same education, avalanche education, is very important. If you look on the professional side of things, we really think that it's nice that the mountain guides in Sweden use the same basic avalanche courses as the ski patrollers or as the soldiers in the armed forces, because it will really make things easier to, when something happens or you need to share information, or if you need to cooperate in the field, if you have the same training, you know what the other people, you know their level of training, and you know what they can and can't do. So in that way, I think that's one of the main goals of the education program, is to gather all the different user groups and also the public into the same system. And if we move on to the second leg, is the practice. We see that some of the methods and standards that you get taught through the education system will actually be used systematically at work, within the warning service, within the avalanche instructors, ski areas, hazard assessments, the mountain guiding in their AM and PM planning, or within the mountain rescue before moving into an avalanche accident site, and so on. So all these different professionals not just share the same training, but they also share some of the methods and standards, which makes it a lot easier if you actually need to work side by side on an avalanche accident, or if you're and the thing is, I will get back to that, but this professional community is not that large. So quite often people work with more than one of these things. Sometimes I know some extreme cases where you probably have same person could check at least 5 or maybe 6 out of these that are on the list. And final leg, communication. So combining same sort of platform for education, practice, and communication. So, and this is what I personally like a lot as a forecaster, is that I know how the public is taught in the Avalanche courses, because I used to teach these courses myself, and we now teach the instructors that teach the public. So we know that all the people that are in the courses, they learn how to understand the Avalanche bulletin, for instance. And that makes it easier for me as a forecaster to communicate when I do the daily bulletin. And also communication between professionals is really a key. If we speak the same language about avalanche size, for instance, that helps a lot when you share information about recent avalanches that you saw when you're out at work. So by trying to merge all these people, these anonymous people that I've just put on the screen here, that when they're quite often working in more than one organization. So that means that there are professional organizations that share competencies on an individual level. We also see that it's easier for, let's say, a mountain guide who also would like to do field work for the avalanche warning service. It's not a big step to sort of do that as well. And also for mountain guides who then want to teach avalanche courses, or for mountain rescue that want to teach avalanche rescue courses, the step is smaller since we all share the same platform. And it's not, I'm not saying that everything is working out 100% perfectly at the moment. There are, of course, organizational differences, but we've really seen that in the last 5-6 years, things have become a lot more smooth, and we're more aligned in, it's easier to speak, it's easier to cooperate between different organizations around avalanche safety and risk management. So that's where we think that we see it as a holistic approach, that is, well, that the parts are, the sum of the parts is greater than the parts themselves. And also if we put those individuals that are the professional community in the center, where they share the education, where they share the methods, their operational practice tools, and they share the same language, it makes our program much more efficient. So that's one of the key things that we've been working on the last couple of years, and I think it's one of the benefits of being a small country, small community, having quite a lot of the same people in different positions, and also not a super strong history or tradition of doing things. And I will get back to that we're not how do you say, our tradition is not so strong. But this is a program overview, and I will not try to explain it in detail, but these are the avalanche courses that we offer at the moment. And the one thing that is super important is that public and professional avalanche courses are totally separate. And just 5 years ago, we just offered avalanche courses, and anyone took them, but they were not user group oriented. And we changed that, and we're very, up until now, very happy with the results. So public goes on the public track, and the professionals, they are on a completely different track here on the lower section. You see the professional program is obviously much more, there's more parts, and it's longer and more ambitious and so on, but it's still like, these are two different things. And the reason is that we find that the types of risks that you need to manage and deal with are totally, they might be the same, but they're in different contexts. So one is really when you're voluntarily taking risks. The public can do basically whatever they want in Sweden. They can ski steep, they can drop cornices with sleds, they can do anything, and there's no law or regulation that prohibits them from doing this. So it's really up to anyone to do whatever they want in the mountains. And then on the other side, when you're at work, there's a lot of laws and legal requirements, there's standards, there's guidelines, there's some personal protection equipment. There are a lot of things that you need to think of, and if you're not following these, you're breaking the law. So just that made for some really confusing avalanche courses in the past, where you had people side by side that were taking the course paid by their employer to create a safer ski resort, for instance, and combining that with people who just wanted to ski steep lines and drop cornices and so on, and knowing when it's safe to do that. So it's we've made it easier for the instructors now by separating the recreational side from the professional side. And also we created more like on the professional side, we work more with modules now. That before you used to learn a little bit of everything in each course, but now we've divided it into different models. So you have a pro, the basic course is a lot of just, you need to identify places where that is avalanche terrain, identify and avoid basically. And then there's a rescue course, and then there's an Avalanche Technician course when you look at the snow and start to learn about assessing the stability, not to forecast the hazard, but assessing stability local or instability on a local level. And that's sort of a 12-day basic training for aspiring avalanche workers. So those three modules is basically everyone needs to have them in place before starting to work. And also we have managed through this sort of holistic concept that we try to do, that we've put the pro courses or pro modules into other external professional training programs. As I said before, that the Swedish mountain guides take some of the courses. They also take courses in other countries, of course, but it makes a good bridge between us and the Mountain Guide Association. The armed forces use the whole program. All the professional courses are integrated in the training of the Swedish mountain warfare soldiers. Ski patrollers use some of the courses, especially rescue ones, but also the ones for assessing snowpack stability, since the ski resorts need to do that kind of work in order to have a control program. And search and rescue organizations, national park staff and wardens use some parts of their programs. So we really try to sort of get all the different professional user groups within the program. And it's a little bit of a sales work, but it's we've noticed that after 5 years, it's much easier now. So basically now all the major organizations are already fully or partly within the sphere of avalanche education program. So that is nice. And this I said before, but if you look at the pro program, we see it as ingredients, whereas the free ride program to the public needs to be a full meal. You need to sort of learn enough on one single course to support yourself after the course, not on all levels or all kinds of projects, but on a basic course, you should of course get the basics in all the fields in order to be self-sustained when you're out doing basic tours or basic off-piste runs or so on after the course. So whereas on a professional course, you can focus just on one side of things, and then when that course is finished, you just tell the participant, if you want to learn about this, you need to take another course.
Mattias,
yeah,
there's because for this slide, I think the question of Christoph fits really well that he put on the chat. Christoph asked about the main focus for the public courses, because here you show the full meal against the ingredients, and like so for the public, which would be the free ride courses, is it terrain, snowpack and weather, then everything mixed, or do you try to focus on stuff that people actually understand and just try to explain them something? Or is
that's a great question.
Or is the full meal everything?
I mean, you need to, there's always limitations, especially time limitations, since the public, you always compete. If they spend 2 days on an avalanche course, it's 2 days less skiing in a season. And so we find it, I mean, we get a lot of interest in the courses, but of course we focus mainly on the things that are will give most bang for the buck, so to speak. I think I'll just continue the slides, but for the full meals, you need to learn a little bit about, you need to learn about terrain, you need to learn about decision making, you need to know a little bit about where should I go when, and also, of course, you need to have a little bit of backup if things don't go as planned. You need to be prepared for a companion rescue. So, but you can't. I mean, if you have a 2-day course, there's a lot of limitations to what you can learn. But I will just start by sharing some of our previous mistakes. This is something that we've stopped doing. That just because you know about snow or about you can identify layers and crystals and yeah, you know your hardnesses or whatever, you can do your extended column tests. That does not help you that very much when managing risk in avalanche terrain as a recreationist, especially on a basic level. So we've totally cut snow out of the public courses, for instance. The snow part is very basic and has nothing to do with crystal types or layers and so on. And if you would rewind 10 years, you would actually dig snow pits on your first avalanche course. And we've stopped doing that. And the second one is that you would get a lot of rescue training on your first avalanche course, but you would learn not so much about terrain and not so much about decision making or about risk management. So we tried to correct that, and maybe I can answer Christoph here, but I think the goal is to provide aid for self-improvement. That we wanted in 2 days, we want some method or a system. We want to share that with the participants as on a recreational level that they can use after the course, because after the course, there's no instructor with them. There is no one who can tell them when they're right, when they're wrong, how much risk they're taking. So we focus more about the risk management process. That you need to plan your day. You need to there are certain things you need to do when you're out on the course. We use the evaluator card from Canada on these basic level courses. So basically you have a system that can make decision-making tool that is, you just give it, put the points in the card, and then you get the recommendation out of it. Because we don't think that 2 days, no one can learn how to make good decisions in avalanche terrain in 2 days. And then we teach them that they need to have sort of a debriefing afterwards and use the debriefing to plan the next day. So this is what we want to focus on to the public, is to give them some kind of risk management method and a framework that they can use after the course. And it should be not just in their minds, but also something on paper or something they can look back on and, hey, this is what the instructor told us, to remind them over and over again. So we want just provide those post-course useful methods and routines, whereas the pro courses focus on industry competency and to improve the work safety and the work sites, and of course to teach the sort of professional methods for avalanche risk management. But here on the professional side, you have much more time if you expect people to take more than one course. So there's a big difference there. And I think it has served us quite well. At least the instructors are the older instructors, they used to teach the old courses where we had all the people in just the one course, and we focused a little bit more on the snow. They say that the new courses are better, and we see that the number of people taking avalanche courses are increasing steadily every year in Sweden. So I think we're doing something right. And also what we see is we've set up a few goals, and I'm not saying that these are the right ones, and I would be very happy to get feedback and comments from all of you professionals in Austria if this makes sense. But our courses used to be more general, and now we focus more on different user groups, get different kinds of training. We used to focus more about the facts. knowing things about avalanches, how fast can avalanches run and so on. And now we focus more about processes and especially risk management processes. That is something that no matter what you do, you should always do this every day in and out for the rest of your life when you plan a trip in the mountains. We used to focus more on the knowledge, but now we want the participants to understand the limitations of their training after the course. So we actually created some new, you finish the course by telling the students that, hey, just because you take the course, there are so many things you don't know. And we also try to give them advice on what is your next step. If you don't want to learn more, maybe you should just hire a guide, for instance, on those more basic level courses. We used to focus a little bit more directly or indirectly on expertise, that you had an instructor that knew everything and told stories and did this and could show all kinds of nice things and tests and telling which crystal was which and so on. But we're not sure that it helped the participants, because after the course, there is no one to tell you all these stories or give you advice. So really what we want to do is provide some sort of guidance for the future, and also mentorship during the course, that the instructors should let the students do most of the thinking, most of the reasoning, and also try to stimulate that the communication within the group among the students. So less focus on the instructor, more focus on the participants. And then before, we used to focus more about the phenomenon avalanches, but now we focus more about managing the risks about the avalanches. So that's sort of what I don't know, I have no idea if this is the modern avalanche course, but we've done our homework a little bit, and I think that's where it's a benefit of not being a large country, not having a large industry, that we have no real traditions. We're not very proud. We know that we are absolutely not the best in class. We need to learn from the pros. We need to look for great ideas. So we've been looking in a lot of places. We use the Mountain Safety Info, the Manuel Ganschwein project, for all the companion rescue and avalanche rescue. We don't need to invent that ourselves. We go to ICAR for rescue as well. We work with Canada. We work with Europe for the European Avalanche Warning Services. We try to go to the ISSW and so on, and we work with our neighbors. And now, most recently, we've also been looking more towards US and ARI, which we find have a really exciting public avalanche training program that's been inspiring to have a look at. And then we sort of integrated into the Swedish training. We get the Swedish versions of the MSI illustrations. We've purchased licenses for the evaluator and for decision making in avalanche terrain from Avalanche Canada. We use the Canadian Avalanche Association OEGSL as our guidelines for recording on the Avalanche Technician courses. So we have not invented Swedish standards. We just took the Canadian ones, and I will tell you why. Because this will be my final sort of part of the presentation, and I specifically was asked to tell a little bit more about how we worked with Canada, and especially the CAA. So I figure I just need to tell you why, because it's not a recent phenomenon. It's basically a part of it's a part of a tradition of some 20 plus years. And it all started in the late 1990s or early 2000s, when there was a group of ski patrollers and highway workers that needed to deal with avalanche problems and the highway section, that figured out that, hey, we need to learn more about avalanches, and where can we do that? There is nothing in Sweden. So they took the trip to Canada to take the CAA level 1, level 2. And the reason why Canada was the choice was that the geography and demography of Canada and Sweden are quite similar. Also, the weather and the climate are more similar as well. And finally, the language, that English was preferred. So I think that's the main reason why those guys did not go to the Alps. That it would be too hard to take courses in German or French or Italian. And also, if you look at the terrain, the weather, the snowpack, and where people live, and which risks that our avalanches create, Canada was probably a place which was more similar to Sweden than, for instance, countries in Europe. So this was some 20 plus years ago that the first real generation of professional avalanche workers in Sweden was created. And that first generation brought back the inspiration, knowledge, and the guidelines and the standards and implemented them locally in Sweden. And then others, me was one of them, was really influenced to say, hey, that seems like a nice thing to do. So I also traveled to Canada, and some of my friends did. And it sort of just became the informal path to, if you want to work with avalanches, that's where you go. And when the Ski Area Association formalized the first generation avalanche education system, it was the people that have been traveling to Canada that created that first generation system. And then when we started the Swedish Avalanche Warning Service and the Svelab Avalanche Education Program in 2015, it felt natural that we needed to build on the history and the methods that we've imported earlier. So that was, it's been a long tradition. And we'll show you shortly some of the displays here. We did the local 8 avalanche terrain exposure scale mapping quite early. This is almost 10 years ago now. It was all manual work then, so no automated aids or automated terrain classification, which we've been using in the avalanche courses ever since. And also for the first operational season, when we started the Swedish Avalanche Warning Service, we purchased the InfoX license, which is the database for Canadian avalanche recordings. We already were very familiar with the conceptual model of avalanche hazards, so we used that alongside with also the North American danger scale, because that scale had been used, perhaps not correctly, but at least that way the Ski Area Association had used a danger scale, a Swedish translation of the North American scale, when communicating to the resort visitors about avalanche hazard near the ski resorts, not in the ski resorts, but near the resorts. And then also we realized that it became quite difficult and complex to have everyone traveling to Canada to get the training. It would be easier to offer the training in Sweden. So, and the only course that we purchased directly from CAA is the level 2 course. All the other courses up to level 2 we produce ourselves, but they have been approved by CAA as prerequisites for the level 2. So level 2 is the level where we want most of our warning service field staff and all forecasters to at least have this level of training. And also after the first warning service season, we invited Grant Statham over for 2 weeks to review our program and give us advice on how we could improve the program. That was proven very valuable. We finished the first level 2 in 2017 and the second one in 2019 with Swedish, Finnish, and also some Norwegian and Icelandic participants on the course. And then, as you all know, we had that pandemic thing, which has been quite difficult over the last couple of years. So we've needed to take a break in this level 2 program in Sweden, but we hope to continue next year. So that was a lot about Canada and how we work, but we find it very valuable that we are small. I mean, it's just me and 2 colleagues really. We have a handful of consultants that we can purchase services from, and then during the winter season we have some 30 field workers that we just hire for the season. So it's we're really a small organization, so we need to sort of invest smartly and put our money where we want to create some benefits. If others have economies of scale, for instance, that they teach a lot of courses in a year, they would know if that course is good or not. But if we were to produce the course ourselves, we would only teach one course every second year, and that would not be, it would not be the best way to improve and develop that sort of advanced level course. So on basic level courses, volumes are much higher, but as we reach up to a level similar to the CA level 2, it's basically we can pull off one examination every 2 years or something. So that's a little bit about how we work, but I would like to sort of finish with a few outlook also for the future, because we of course we hope to maintain and refine this strategy where we try to buy, steal, borrow whatever other people are doing well and implement it in the Swedish context. But we also absolutely have an increased focus on Europe, and we want to cooperate more with our European neighbors. Would be very happy if to get ideas for projects with any organizations in Austria, for instance. And I could also inform you that we have formally now applied for membership in the EAWS, and of course hope that the membership committee and the General Assembly will approve the application. We will know in June, I guess. And that will also mean that we will fully implement all the EAWS standards for next year, which means making a new version of our danger scale, for instance, a Swedish translation of the European version. And we feel very certain that we've been sort of shadow working now for the last 3 seasons and see that those methods, that EAWS methods will work just fine with the way we worked before, and they will not create any major problems or major changes in our program. We see it as a strength, and we also see that the development in the EAWS the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years has been very impressive, and so we really hope to become members and be a part of the European community there. But we also would like to maintain our good connection and our link to Canada, of course, and also, as I mentioned, that we find that ARI makes some really exciting risk management based avalanche courses for the public, and we hope to sort of formalize that in some way for the upcoming seasons as well, because we don't know that we know something, but there's always people that know more, so it's nice to work with those that are best in the world. And I think I'll just stop there and say thank you very much. I've been talking maybe too long now. I'm sorry if that's the case, but if you have questions or want to provide some feedback or opinions, I'd be very happy to answer or listen or whatever.
Thank you, Mattias. Thank you from the Austria. I think we have to wave and make a camera schwenk machen, which is better on the microphone than clapping, because this might be a little bit annoying if we clap into the microphone.
Thank you very much.
This is the time. Thank you so much for your input. We have a couple of questions, and this is actually now the time to ask Mattias. And I think you already raised a couple of very interesting points, and you already kind of answered the question that Christoph raised, which was the focus of the recreational courses. So in the end, and I think to summarize this, the full meal that you serve is mostly on how to deal with the terrain and risk.
Yes.
So like this is what you do.
It's recognizing terrain, manage risks, like where do we go, why, and if we go, how do we reduce the risks, and then if things don't work out, you need to solve the situation with companion rescue. So
companion rescue still stays the essential part. This is not like going in any other course.
No, but we've made it more basic. Like you don't need to teach the first people that take the first course don't need to find 2 buried objects, for instance, which we taught before. We had I think so we've made the scenarios easier, because statistically most cases people will have 1 person buried and so on. So we've reduced the number of hours because it used to be almost on a 2-day course, 1 day rescue and 1 day the rest, and we found that it's too much weight on something that is not, how do you say, it's something that you will do after you're in trouble. You would be better to invest not getting caught in the first place.
Looking at crystals might not help you in that situation.
Now we realize that now, but we didn't do it before.
So if we have any questions in here, you can step to the question podium and ask here. If you have questions online, you can use the raise hand or the chat function, or just, yeah. Oh, Christoph wants to formulate his own question. Christoph, please.
Hey, Matthias. Thank you for your nice presentation. It was really cool. Was wondering for your franchise approach, do the instructors have to pay for what you deliver, or is that completely open source, open data, and they just get the label?
It's actually, they have to pay, but they pay say roughly 100 euros as a symbolic fee, and we don't want to have it fully open source because it's we think that people that teach others avalanche safety we want to have some quality control. So that means basically that you need to fulfill all prerequisites to become an instructor. Then you need to attend an instructor training workshop. And then after that, you will receive the materials, and you pay symbolically because you also sign a contract where you state some things that I promise I will do this and this, and I will not do this and that, and so on. So there's a little bit of a control function there. It's not fully open source.
Okay, and do you take over for maintenance? So if, for example, Mountain Safety Info is changing some of their content, you take care about forwarding that within your instructors community?
Yeah, yes, we will not do it instantly. We have said that we create the manual every season for every course, and then we update the manuals between the seasons. So any changes, and also we have an instructor seminar before the season, instructor seminar after the season, and an evaluation form after the season. So we want the feedback from all the courses to go into the improvement work, alongside if MSI updates methods for digging strategy, for instance, we will implement it not during a season, but for the next season.
Thanks.
And maybe this question adds up on the international franchise level, because so the level 2 courses are fully CIA courses as they are in Canada, and the other ones are like certified, and I'm very bad with this word, prerequisites. Yeah. And but how much do you just take the DACUMs of the Canadian courses, or how much Canadian course is in your pre-courses to the level 2? Are they very similar? Yeah,
you can say we've been inspired. I mean, in order to fulfill the prerequisites, for instance, we needed to create a weather course. We didn't have that. Canadians have a mountain weather course, so we may had the Swedish Met Office meteorologists creating a course for us, and we also we have the courses taught by one forecaster and one meteorologist, for instance, and then we also created an advanced AVSAR course that has been approved by CAA that this is sufficient for applying to level 2. But the level 2 course itself is, we find it's more valuable if it is actually the CAA course, because that diploma is more, how do you say, worth more than if we would make it the fully Swedish course. So we just invite instructors over, and we have at least one Swedish co-instructor to assist, one or two Swedish co-instructors to assist the Canadian instructors. So, but so far it's been working out fine. It's a CA level 2, but it's in place in Sweden, and I know they've done the same in Japan and Iceland and New Zealand, for instance. So we just follow that path.
Thank you, Matthias. Do we have any last questions in the room for Matthias? Or do we have any online questions?
I do have a question, Mattias. Wait a second, I turn on the camera here. How big is the core team of instructors? I mean, you said you are providing these training workshops for instructors.
Yes.
How big is that core team? Is that just the three of you?
It's the three of us, and then we also have a small network of like we have contracts with Avalanche consultants that we can hire for all kinds of work. So I can have someone updating a student manual, or we can have them working forecasting hours, or so we've just, since we're not allowed to employ more people, we've found a few that we have a contract with that we can use for all kinds of Avalanche related work, and they have sort of, I would say, some of the more qualified Avalanche workers in Sweden that we've put in a contract. So but it's a team of say 5 or 6 people that will do that, and we generally have one instructor workshop per year where we sort of educate the new instructors. But the network is, we've put some almost 100 people through the program, but they are not all teaching on all levels. So there's 100 that can teach the first basic level public course, but there's maybe this season we had between some 45 to 50 instructors that were active. So that you need to activate yourself every season, and if you're not active for 2 years, you need to go back to training before you can start teaching again, and so on. So there's some sort of quality control in order to not just release everything. Because I think even if we have the best manual and we just let anyone who felt like it teach the course, we will not be happy with the output. So that's why we want to have some, I would say that the expertise develops the course, and you also need some sort of expertise to teach the course, and that might not be the same person, but they need to be qualified enough at least.
Yeah, and I guess not everybody is allowed to teach every course, right? I mean,
no, that's the part which I never explained, but there are different instructor workshops for different courses. So you first need to take the basic 3-day instructor training to become an instructor, but if you want to teach another course, you need to take a workshop for that course, and you might not, and you need to have some more qualifications, for instance. So the more professional, higher level courses, there are of course less instructors. And advanced rescue, then you need to sort of professionally work with rescue in order to teach that course, and so on. So,
thank you.
I have another question, and it's, do you know how many courses do your instructors give, like just for the public? And the second question, do you know how this amount of courses grow in the last years?
Yes, we just reached more than 100 courses per season this year. So this year we had 104, I think, public courses that were taught by some 40 instructors. So meaning that perhaps some instructors just taught one course, and there were also instructors that taught 10 courses. So some are making a living out of it. Some are doing it on the side of other things as guiding or something else. So
just a question in between. How many people do you take for one course? Is there a limitation, or is it
yes.
like,
so generally it's 6 students per instructor, but on the first basic level course, in order to keep prices a little lower, we have the 1 to 8, so 8 students per instructor, and it's just on the basic course because we want as many people as possible to take that course. But then it's 1 to 6, which we found was some sort of consensus in the industry that is a good number. And
right.
And regarding, we see the number of participants grow from very low levels. So we have a sort of a linear development every year, and we're starting to reach that, 800 students in a year. So it's not much, but we started on less than 300. So we're happy that we see that more and more people know about the program, more and more people want to take the training, and we also see that it's become more popular to attend an Avalanche course. And of course, some of the instructors are really good on Instagram and so on, so they do good marketing in selling the courses and so on. So it's
all right, thank you.
But like maybe this is a last question or last comment, because then we have to go on. Christoph, are you still raising your hand because you have a question?
Yes, but it's not towards Mattias, maybe more directed to the room. Is there one or two mountain guides in the room? So my question would...
I see two in the front row.
Perfect.
So at least two we have.
Perfect. So to the mountain guides, how is worker safety regulated in Austria for mountain guides?
Walter doesn't know.
And me too.
And Bertie also doesn't know. Is there any other person that could answer Christoph's question? Apparently, we failed to answer your question in the room.
Maybe because there is no answer, but I don't know.
Probably not. But it's a good question then. And then maybe Chris?
So I roughly checked the law. There is at least a Tyrolean law for mountain guides, right?
Yes.
So I don't see any entry for worker safety in that law. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, if Walter doesn't know, then we have a problem. Probably have a problem. But then there's one, because Mattias, maybe as a last thing, because Bertie was also asking about, and you said some of them make a good living of it. So in the end instructors can make a living out of it, and if you're a really good instructor, of course, I don't know, they determine themselves how they do their business model with it for the public courses.
Yeah, but it seems like we don't regulate the prices, so it seems like the market regulates the prices. So on a basic course, you could say that it costs about 350, 400 euros to participate normally, and then you take that times 8 for 2 days work. So there are people there's no one that is fully sort of just making a living out of selling Avalanche courses, but we see that the ones that are doing best are most likely combining at least 2 or maybe 3 knee-related things. So we have some companies where a group of instructors have organized themselves around teaching courses. They also do guiding, and they also work for us with the field observations and so on. And then maybe they have some other work on the side as well. But they are working and making good money during the winter seasons just on Avalanche-related work, and that was not possible before, of course, before we had a warning service. And also we find that they are probably better at teaching the courses than the ones that are just teaching 1 course or 2 in a season. So we would strategically like to have more people that work more or less full-time, but maybe just part-time with the instructing, but full-time with avalanche safety and risk management in the future. We think
so this would be the full meal courses, is the market regulates itself, which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And maybe as a last comment to if we go towards the ingredients, I mean, the money that you acquire to run the courses and everything with the CIA and stuff, where is the funding source, or where does the money come from for the professional courses? Okay. Are they just incredibly expensive?
No, I would say they are the lower level professional courses are also sold the same way by the instructor companies. So like the entry level professional course and the basic avalanche rescue course, they're also sold commercially. When you come to the Avalanche Technician course, there are is a little bit more regulated. It's organization wise. It's offered by different organizations, but not on an individual instructor. So it's based on the needs for that kind of competency. And then when you come to the other courses, the mountain weather course, the level 2, the advanced AVSAR course, it's then we are running the courses and then we set the price. So we tend to subsidize a little bit. And we've also, since we are on government funding, if we have funding, we've done that with the Canadian courses as well, that we're not making a profit, rather we subsidize the participants a little bit to have more Avalanche workers to afford to take that sort of higher level training. So.
Thank you, Mattias. I think there would be more questions, and it's still good to learn also from you and to see how everything works in Sweden. My favorite slide was the full meal versus the ingredients. That summarized pretty much everything. A big thank you from Austria and Innsbruck. We're not clapping, we're waving. It's just not too good on the microphone.
Yeah. Thank you. Wiederschauen. I hope to learn about how you work next time,
yes.
so we can learn from you.